Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm going to introduce you a paper called Disruptor Recognition and Market Value of Incumbent Firm, Airbnb and the Lodging Industry. This paper has been developed by me. My name is Simone Bianco. I'm a PhD candidate at Virginia Tech, and by my two advisors, Dr. Florian Zach and Dr. Manish Singal, Assistant and Associate Professor at Virginia Tech. This paper has been published on Journal of Hospitality and Tourism Research in the spring of 2022. And today I'm going to create a presentation. I'm going to show you a presentation that talks about this paper. I will firstly look at, I will firstly show you an abstract of the paper where I go through what we found and what are the main part of the paper in the first 3 minutes. While for the rest 10 minutes, I'm going to go deeper into each section of the paper, and you can skip through each section if you're more interested in one other than over the other. So let's start. First of all, what are we talking about? From the title, you can see that we are talking about disruption and Airbnb. Specifically, we start by many interviews released by CEOs of incumbent hotel firms that were essentially saying that Airbnb was not seen as a competitor. This is because they believe that Airbnb, despite being still very big, we're talking about 2013, 2014, Airbnb was growing at an important pace, but they were still thinking that Airbnb was not a competitor because it was offering a different type of product or service. However, Airbnb grew to be the biggest hospitality firm in the world and with the biggest evaluation, and it went public in 2020. And eventually Marriott, Accor, Hyatt, and many other companies, they create their own short-term lease accommodation. So we see a complete change of mind from Airbnb is not a competitor to create their own short-term lease options. This is a legitimation process. So a process by which a firm is not regarded as a competitor, is not regarded as important, and then it gets legitimized to the point that incumbent firm, they copy it. So looking at theory, this is absolutely institutional theory, which in this case, it merges with competitors recognition, competitive dynamics, specifically with awareness, motivation, and capability model developed by Chen in 1996. However, institutional theory and competitors recognition are almost inexistent in HTM literature. So looking at the theory, especially institutional theory, we saw how the process of legitimation is imposed by external pressures on firms. So what we do in this paper, essentially, we try to understand whether the stock market was able to pose external pressure on firms as Airbnb was growing in importance in order to have them legitimizing this new company and this new business model in general. So what we found essentially is that as Airbnb was creating new products, new features in the website, incumbents started to be aware of the threat and posing pressures on incumbent firms. We also found that increasing question posed by financial analysts led to this event, led companies to recognize Airbnb as a competitor. And overall, the market value was affected by Airbnb, the growing importance. This study has a different contributions. First of all, we are the first one to investigate the legitimation process of Airbnb. Second, we are the first one in HTM to empirically demonstrate institutional pressures. And we are also the first to add to the innovation literature to understand how the role of the stock market can be important in legitimizing a company, in creating and legitimizing a disruptor. So now we're going to focus, I'm going to focus on each section of the paper. And as I said, you can skip through each one if it's easier for you. So first of all, here we have an interview to Chris Nazera, Hilton CEO, and he said, we do not believe there is a material impact on the bulk of our markets because Airbnb was not giving the same type of service, showing how him, but also the other CEOs, they were not regarding Airbnb as a competitor. However, as Airbnb grew in importance, became the most valued hotel company in the market, a new other type of firms, short-term lease came out, Sonder, Vrbo, Vacasa, but even Booking.com started to offer that. TripAdvisor started to create a company. And as a result, Marriott created Homes and Villas, Accor created One Flight Stay, Hyatt invested in Oasis, and Wyndham in Love Home Swap, but they were not the only ones. So many incumbent firms started to invest or buy short-term lease accommodations. So how did we get from here to here? What would happen in between? How did we get from Airbnb is not a competitor to offer our own version of Airbnb? So looking at the literature, Airbnb has been regarded as a disruptor in our industry. And research looked at consumer side, how consumer changed their way of experiencing travel or behaving in booking. But on the firm side, research mostly focused on location strategies or the impact of Airbnb on incumbent hotel. Well, on the reaction side, there's very, very few research. The most important is Zach Nicolau and Sharma, which looked at the effect of counter moves on market value. But however, there is still this gap that we don't know how Airbnb got legitimized. And this is the main focus on our paper. So looking at the literature, in the general literature, we see how legitimation comes from institutional theory, precisely from pressures that are coming from the external environment, while on the competitor recognition side, we see the awareness motivation capability developed by Chen in '96 that states how firms, in order to recognize a competitor or recognize a competitive move, they need to be aware of the competitors, motivated to act, and capable of doing it. So essentially, what we do is that we try to understand whether incumbent hotel firm receive the pressures from the external environment in order to recognize Airbnb as a competitor. Specifically, we look at whether the stock market as an entity residing in the external environment of the firm was able to create institutional pressures. We do that because stock market is able to do that, to exercise institutional pressures. We found it in management literature, often cited. And on the other side, the asset-light strategy that is now used among hotel companies was pushed by the market. So we know that the stock market, specifically in our industry, was able to push for change, and specifically in the 90s. So we look at financial analysts and investors. So two different entities within the stock market, which are able to pose institutional pressures and influence firms' behavior. So how do we do it? So essentially, we look at the financial analysts by understanding and by investigating keywords on earning calls. So how many times financial investors ask incumbent CEOs what they wanted to do about Airbnb during their earning calls. Then we looked at investors' pressure. So we looked at how the market, the stock market, the price reacted as Airbnb grew in importance, using a Frame-a-French 3-factor model. We took the data from earning call transcript, 853 earning call transcript, 44 milestone that we took on Airbnb.com and Factiva, which is one of the most famous and important news websites. And the stock market was taken from Crisps and famous French three-factor website. So we see here some of the main descriptive statistics. We see on specifically here when on the keywords in earning calls, how the number of questions regarding Airbnb posed by financial analysts increased dramatically from 2014 to 2015. So we think that 2015 was the main year in which Airbnb was recognized and legitimized. It was also the year in which, as shown by Zach, Nicolau, and Sharma, was the first year in which some incumbent company reacted to Airbnb, specifically Hyatt. Then, to be sure, we went and checked the mentioning of Airbnb or short-term lease in the 10K filing, so the annual filings of firms, whether they were recognizing Airbnb as a competitor. We see how most of them, they were recognizing in 2015, so at the end of 2015, while if we had also 2016, the one that arrived a little later, then more than 80% of the companies in our sample recognizing Airbnb within that time frame. So this led us to create a pre and post recognition of Airbnb. So we have a pre-recognition from 2008 to 2012, and then since we thought that recognition was complete in 2015, we left 2014 and 2013 out. So 2008 before, 2015 to 2020 after. If you look at the paper, there are robustness checks on how this measure is valid. Essentially, what we found is that for different products, for different type of events, there was a different reaction. So product events, they became negative after recognition. So we see how Airbnb growing in importance, creating new features on their website affected incumbent market value. So investors knew about the threat, knew about the possibility of Airbnb becoming a threat after recognition. So they recognize it. On the other side, financial events, they were negative before and after, only for REITs though, not for hotel firms. This suggests that because of a different financial structure, REITs were more prone to this type of risk. But while acquisition and partnerships, they never were significant. We also tried vertical and horizontal acquisition in their robustness checks, but there was nothing significant. But overall, we saw how incumbent market value was affected by Airbnb as it grew in importance. And that may have had an effect, after the legitimation. So the legitimation was probably mainly caused by financial analysts. So the contribution, we are the first one to investigate Airbnb and the legitimation process. This paper wants to be a base on which to build other future papers. Also because we add to the literature on disruption and innovation, because we show the involvement of the stock market in legitimation of disruptors, which may lead future researchers to look at involvement of the stock market in other decisions taken by CEOs in HTM. We also add to the HTM literature by being the first to empirically investigate institutional pressures. All of the other papers in institutional theory, they were mostly qualitative. They were not empirically investigating the effect of pressures. And then we have practical contribution because we show how incumbent CEOs, incumbent decision maker may anticipate changes in the market. We have a limitation because of a small number of companies, because not many are publicly traded, and other entities beside the stock market may have played a role. This is also a way for future researchers to amplify this research. So looking at OTAs or other means by which incumbent firms may have been pushed to react to Airbnb. And then we can investigate further involvement in strategies from the stock market, as said before. That was all. Thank you very much for following the video until here. You can see in the screen our email addresses if you have any questions, or you can leave a comment and or reach out to any other. We will put the LinkedIn profile and ResearchGate profiles here in the description. Subscribe to the channel if you want to receive more videos as I have new paper published. And again, reach out if you have any question. Thanks. Okay. I think it's good.